to make sure we're back on the air now. So we know that everything is running and everything is actually going as planned. And I know one of the reasons why we may have been terminated, but we're now back live. So just make sure you're out there listening. When we look at the candidate, we think it's good for us to keep you informed. In fact, we believe that it is important for ordinary people to be well informed, and the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass is doing just that, keeping you informed. It is important that people understand that when we say that we wholeheartedly support informing the people, we mean all people. An informed voter is necessary and desirable to provide support for good choices in choosing the candidate for the next 4 years. So here we are. One individual from out there in the state of California just said that we are still at work. So hope to join you in the next 30 minutes or so, and we are looking forward to that individual. Miss Brandy, are you out there? How are you doing? Miss Brandy, are you out there?
Yes. Hi. How you doing?
I am fine. I'm not sure if you were on mute or whatever the case may be. But here we are, Brandy. October 24th, 2015 is the upcoming election for the governor, the sheriff, the state representative, the state senator, the police jurors, the tax assessor, the clerk of court, and so forth and so on. Now, I know that you came from a family that allowed you to become a part of the voting process. Now, we fast forward to you being a college graduate and off doing your own thing. And just for a little while, if you don't mind, I want to talk to you specifically about local elections, state election, and national election. Because when we look at the picture, all politics is local. It pretty much starts local, and from that point on, it goes out in a broad state and above. Now, let's look at this. Locally in Caldwell Parish, I know that you don't reside here, but I'm almost certain you see on Facebook, you hear some of your former friends, some of your colleagues, when you look on social media, Facebook mainly, you look on Twitter, Instagram, you always see somebody having a problem here, there, whatever the case may be. So what do you think is the most important political issue at this very moment in this country?
I honestly believe I spent a lot of time out there before I moved to Atlanta, and in Columbia particularly, I noticed that in our black communities, there was a lot of trash everywhere, and then the drug use out there, getting the drugs off the street. I see a lot of my classmates from high school that, you can't even recognize them. And then when I drive through the community that I grew up in, it was horrible watching the kids on the street stepping over the garbage that was out there, and then the adults sitting outside and seeing that. So I think that is one of the most important things in our community that needs to be cleaned up. Once that is cleaned up, I do believe that everybody will feel like they're more important, and they'll take part in the community.
And you bring up a very valid point that I have stated many times within my broadcast. When you allow the people, the voter, the constituent, to become or feel a part of the political process, they become more of a value to the community. So when we look at all the trash that's in the neighborhood, now when you look at Ward 4, District 4 now, and mainly in the area where you grew up at, when we look at all of this trash that's out there in the community, what role should the community play, and what role should those who are running for police jury and are those who are already elected, what role should they play, and how should they coexist in your opinion?
I think they need to play a major role. Not only during election season, but in everyday life. Not just saying, hey, we need to get out there and clean up, but actually going out there and cleaning up. If the kids in the community notice that the politicians and the adults and everybody is out there they will take part in that, and that will allow them, as they're growing up, to know, okay, this is the right thing to do, and they will respect the politicians more because they see that they are taking a part in the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when we look at and oftentimes, Brandon, and what I try to do is just be honest, straightforward, to the point. When we look at our community as a whole, and we're going to branch out. We're going to look at District 4 specifically. Okay, when you look at all of this trash on the ground, all of this trash that's on the road, and you see people that live in this particular neighborhood that drive by this trash on a daily basis and never take the initiative to pick up the trash themselves, do you fault them for that?
I do, because a lot of times, I mean, it's about, the environment you live in. If they're past it, normally, I mean, you look in their houses, they probably have trash on the floors in their houses. So, I mean, like myself, when I drove by, I immediately asked my dad, I was like, well, do they have anybody that actually comes out here and, pick up trash out here? And he was like, well, yeah. But whenever we were by our house, my dad was actually out there, picking up the trash around our houses. But you noticed the other adults were just sitting on their cars, and, I guess it was normal to them.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I guess it's really about the environment you live in. And if if you're a trashy person, if that's not, a big deal to you, of course you're not going to, think it's nothing. But as of myself, I mean, I'm not used to, driving down the street and rolling over trash bags.
And you made a very valid point, and I'm glad that you did. You said that it becomes, in a sense, becomes normal. And when it becomes normal, that becomes a part of the community, which takes me to this next question. Why do you think people don't get involved in politics in not just Caldwell Parish, but abroad? Because I'm going to give or provide at some point some voting facts, some statistics, where it's talking about 6 and 10 voters, the age adults. They do not show up at the poll. Do you have any tutelage that you'd like to offer regarding why you feel that people don't get involved in politics as a whole?
Well, I honestly don't think that, our voices are heard anyway, even if we do get involved. I know there are layers to politics. There's, I guess you say levels of politics, yes. You have like, say, Obama. I mean, he can't do everything, but, whenever you ask, I guess, the sheriff of Caldwell Parish, he knows that the issues that are going on in the parish.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody to overlook issues like that, like, everybody knows that drugs are a big thing out there. Everybody knows that, there's not a lot of things that, kids can do out there. So, of course, they're going to fall back onto drugs or fall back onto things that are going to put them in jail. So, if they're not, their voices are not being heard, why would they stand in line and vote for somebody that they really don't know anyway?
Well, Brandon, let me ask you this specifically. And again, we're trying to create a dialogue, not to be critical, but I have to make sure that I be specific and to the point, spade a spade. Okay, there are some who believe that there is no drug problem in this particular parish and outside of this parish. So by you not being here and you knowing that there is a drug problem, do you feel that there's a disconnect between what reality is and what perception is?
There's a total disconnect. Everybody in the parish knows that there's a drug problem. I spent from May to July in Grayson, and I spent a lot of time in Columbia. And I have friends that are still out there, and if I can walk into someone's house and see it, there's no way that they can say that there's no drug problem out there.
Mm-hmm. So, and the reason why, we're talking local and state, because, see, all of this ties into why people need to get involved, why people need to understand who they are going to be elected, and not just elect people because somebody come and tell you to vote for this person. That's mental slavery to me. When somebody can force you or tell you to vote for somebody, that's not your choice. So when we look at this right here, what in general do you think are the qualities of a good political leader, whether it's on the local level, the state level or the national level?
Qualities of a good leader. I mean, I would say being trustworthy and listening to your supporters and at least making a good effort at making change and not just having the best fish fry in the community.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about this fish fry, and I was talking to a candidate the other day, and their position was that they didn't feel like that should take place. And partially, I agree with that. But I said, here we are. Let me explain to you why this takes place in this manner. Because, see, when individuals didn't have a right to vote, and then they became eligible to vote after Jim Crow and all of that had been dismantled, the very thing that the master or massa, whatever the case may be, he started bringing peas and okra and corn and all that through the neighborhood to gain votes. And as it became older and older and we moved toward greater technology, now it's the one and only fabulous fish fry. But my thing has been, Brandon, this is that don't be fooled, because black people now as a whole do not vote in blocks now. They vote for the individual candidate. And make no mistake about it, would you say that any candidate that's out there running, they make a mistake if they fail to go and address the black community as a whole?
Okay. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
When we look at the black community as a whole specifically, when a candidate chooses or refuses to go and ask for that vote, do you feel they make a major mistake?
Well, I mean, I don't think that anybody should ask for a vote. I think you should make a point of why they should vote for you. I mean, I can ask you, hey, Baron, can you buy me a purse? Either you say yes or no. But if I don't give you a valid reason for buying this purse, I don't think, it's not going to go far. Yes, a lot of people are, I don't know, they have this mind game on somebody, I guess, if you ask them, okay, hey, vote for me, and then the next person has not come to their house and asked them that, of course they're going to say, well, he asked me to vote for him, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for him. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that it's effective to just go and ask somebody, hey, will you vote for me, without giving me a good reason to vote for you, mm-hmm. and backing, support that will back the reason to vote for it.
Okay, now, when we look at getting the community involved, once we get the community involved, what do you think needs to happen to keep that momentum there and to keep the community actively involved, not just every 4 years in 4-year races or every 2 years when we look at congressional races? How do we keep the vast majority of the community? Because when we look at police jury, for example, they are the ones who are responsible for the potholes in your neighborhood, your lighting. When we look at an accident or drugs in the community, your local sheriff would be the one that's responsible for that. So how should an individual go about, once they obtain the office that they're running for, how should they relate to the community? Once every 4 years when they're running for election, or should they come out there every now and then and ask the community, hey, look, how am I doing? What is it that we can do? What do you think?
I think just being involved in the community. Don't just wait until, after their signs are taken down and you don't see them anymore. Seeing them all the time. And then if the potholes, or if they're saying that they're going to fill the potholes 2 months down the road or a year down the road and there's still potholes everywhere, or the lights are still busted out in the community, that means they're not really understanding the main reason, or, the reason they should be elected. Mm-hmm. If they're elected, I mean, they need to remain in the community. They need to be around. I mean, the kids are in the park. The park is not very, my kids would not go to their park. Mm-hmm. So they need to be in the parks. They need to understand, it's not a friendly, family environment. And they should be out there with them, noticing everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. It just remains. This election time, or even these surveys that they're saying, hey, how am I doing? You should know how you're doing.
Uh-huh. Okay, so when we look at the voter turnout, which is generally low, especially in the African American community, how could more people be persuaded to vote? And is voting an important responsibility of the citizen based on what you know and what you have been able to observe over the last 10 or 15 years in your adult life?
Honestly, I'm not real big on politics. My parents are, and I think, watching them and being in an environment that I grew up, that made me want to be more involved. As an adult, honestly, I voted for Obama because I thought he was handsome. But whenever I go to, vote for other, elected officials, I always ask my parents, hey, who are you guys voting for? Because like the debate last night, I didn't even watch it because that doesn't interest me, and I think it's a reality show. But I think if I was more educated on, what the elected officials will bring to the table, and then being able to trust them and know, okay, well, yeah, I've seen them do this in the community. I've seen them before. Not when it's election time and this is the first time I'm seeing this man smiling and trying to shake my hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When I was in Columbia, I noticed that a lot. Like, a couple of people pulled up at my parents' house, and I'm home by myself. I'm not going to open the door.
Mm-hmm.
But they pop up when it's election time, and then you don't see them anymore.
Which is a major mistake that most politicians fail to understand and realize, that people have become more savvy, they have become more informed, they have become more educated. No longer work in 2015. Would you agree to that?
I agree, because times have changed and social media is like crazy now. You can get anything you want about a person on Google or not just put up signs. They have to go out and get the vote.
Uh-huh.
Now I see, Facebook pages of people are tagging me in posts, sending me messages. I'm like, I don't even live in Louisiana.
Lot of different. You would think that the stinking thinking that used to exist now back then would in fact have changed, but in a sense, in fact, get involved and stay in tune with the neighborhood as a whole.
To walk in their shoes in order to know what they're living in their everyday life. You can't just drive by and say, okay, I understand, and keep going. That's why nobody understands the real problem with the drug problem in the parish, because they're not actually there. They're patrolling for a second, they're going. They're not in these homes. They're not talking to people. And they're not there at the times that it's going on. So
right.
If you're not actually in the shoes of the person or the shoes of the community, what the problem is, you'll never know.
Right. Okay, Brenda, if you don't mind, it's about 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You're listening to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. If you don't mind, we're going to pause briefly and play a couple of commercials, and we'll be right back. So if you got any activity that you want to do, you can mute your lines. We're going to be off for about a minute and a half, and then I'll bring you back on.
Okay.
On October 24th, 2015, elect Clay Bennett for experienced leadership. In 1996, I began my law enforcement career at the age of 29. Over the past 18 years, I have been to many schools in an effort to better serve our parish. I would never claim to know everything, because law enforcement is a continuous process that takes years to learn, receiving legal updates and attending training classes from year to year. Just like any job, you get better at it over time by constant training, learning from mistakes made, and years at doing your job. Equally important is the ability to communicate and build a relationship with the community. Participating in activities with the public and our youth is essential in building positive relationships with law enforcement. I have always been a true Spartan fan and eager to support our schools by sponsoring our sports teams through the years. By coaching Dixie Youth for many years, then being an assistant coach for our high school Spartan baseball team has given me the opportunity to make memories never forgotten and to build relationships with our young people. I have been a Christian for nearly 20 years. Currently, I serve as a RA leader for the kids in my church. I am also a member of the Gideons, serving as the treasurer for Caldwell Parish for many years. If our youth can see your next sheriff and law enforcement as a positive role model working with our community, then we will see positive change in our parish. This is paid political advertisement by Clay Bennett for sheriff. Please vote on October 24th, 2015.
Hello, my name is David May, candidate for Clerk of Court in Caldwell Parish. There would be debate about who can best lead us into the future. But if I could sit down with each one of you, as I have so desperately tried, I would look into your eyes and tell you, my office and my staff will work hard for you, be honest with you, and always put you, the voter, first. I have enjoyed visiting with each one of you to tell you as much about me as I possibly could. Now, time is running out. I need you to please consider me as your next Clerk of Court for Caldwell Parish. I promise you one thing. I will do this job with the best of my ability. I have served my country in the Marines. Now I am asking to serve the parish for you. Vote David May, Clerk of Court, Caldwell Parish on October 24th, 2015. Paid for by David May for Clerk of Court.
We are back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. Tonight we're talking local and state politics, why it's important for voters to get involved. Brandon, I'm not going to hold you too much longer. I just want to ask you a couple other questions. When we look at politicians as a whole, and I've always said, and I've said at some point, I'm going to explain, that there is a distinct difference between a politician and a public servant. When we look at politicians, do you think politicians in general are honest?
I think politicians are human.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I think whenever, you say and do what you have to do at that time to get the vote. And, honestly, I think in the back of their mind, they're like, we really can't do that, but we're going to tell them yes. We're going to smile and down and keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they're grimy or anything. I just don't think that when I hear politicians, I don't have like a warm, fuzzy feeling. I have okay, let me keep going and do something else feeling. As far as like a public servant, I think a public servant is more of a person that is in the community,
mm-hmm.
serving the community,
mm-hmm.
a community that's really involved in the community and, making an effort. So I don't think the word politician is I think they need to change that word.
Yeah, okay. Well, here's my position on that. Just like humans, politicians can be rotten to the core. Just like an apple in a basket, it can be rotten. And I'm saying that to say this because, again, my goal is to try to bring a different perspective to those who are running, including myself, those who are already elected, to understand that you work for those who are out there. So you don't just show up at church on the second and third Sunday when you're running for office. When you're already in office, come to church and fellowship. Because, see, you get off into the public service aspect, and then you get off into the aspect of gaining respect from the community. And again, because we're looking at the millennials now versus the baby boomers, the millennials have learned and understood when they got out of high school or get out of high school, they understand that we refuse to be taken for granted. We deserve the same amount of respect. And because I talk to these kids on a daily basis. Okay, and one of the questions that they always ask is, why should I get out and vote when these people are not going to do nothing but what they want to do anyway? So some of that is a myth that needs to be dispelled. but some of it is hardcore facts because you have those that are out there. Now, when we look at Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, I call him the Joker, the character, because that's what he is specifically to me. Okay, when we look at everything this guy stands for, it's almost like he's going against everything that Martin King and some of those other civil rights individuals from that era stood for. Diversity, okay, voting rights, okay, immigrants coming in to the country. Before you go, we're going to branch it out to national. What do you think about the national candidates that's out there, whether it's from the Republican Party or the Democratic Party?
Honestly, I think Donald Trump, he entertains me. Like I look forward to the next crazy thing he has to say. I don't know. I still have a long ways to go as far as, really believing and trusting and really taking part of saying, okay, yes, I'm going to vote for that person, either it's Democratic or Republican, because nobody has really touched me in a way that me saying, okay, yeah, I trust this person and I value what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Now, honestly, I think it's a big show. I think everything that's going on in politics right now is just like me watching the Housewives of Atlanta.
Okay.
I never know. Like, I just look forward to the craziness it's just across the board. It's not even Donald Trump. It's all of them. It's just humorous right now. I don't even think they're taking themselves serious.
Uh-huh.
Last night was it was entertaining. Like, I had a headache. I cut it off and went to bed.
Okay. Candidate Dina Domain just indicated through live chat that she'll be calling in shortly. Brandon, for those who are at your age, and we don't have to get off into the age number, okay, but we want to make sure that we try to bring those who are like-minded under this tent. And this tent is composed of a rainbow of all people, not just blacks, not just whites, not just Mexican, but all people. Okay, so when we look at this tent, okay, this tent of making a difference, let me ask you this: what is it that you like to offer in your closing to anybody that's out there listening, whether they're from the baby boom era, the millennial era, or somewhere in between? What advice would you like to offer before you log off?
I would say be an individual. Don't vote for somebody just because they're black, or don't vote for somebody just because they're a Democrat. That's the biggest mistake us as black individuals have. Yes, we think that, okay, the best candidate will be a Democrat. Just be educated on everybody that's running, and don't just vote for somebody because the next person is voting for them.
Right.
Be an individual and, vote because you really, truly believe this person will make a difference, even if, it's a fairy tale right now.
Right.
But I just think, just really be educated and, be open.
Mm-hmm. And as a voter, and as an individual who have the ability to get other people to go out to vote, that's your age. What would you like to offer to those who are running for office as to what they need to do to get the voter involved and gain an interest in them, their candidacy, or just in general getting out there voting?
I think they need to get into these schools, go to the colleges, speak to them. The biggest thing right now is education. Of course, with me, I'm really into education. And when I was in college, I was kind of ignorant to the fact of it because we had no idea what was going on. But I really think them getting into the schools and speaking to these college students that are about to be out in the real world like myself, and also getting in the community more. Don't just talk to the older people. I won't say older people, but
but I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
30s, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to the younger people that are actually the people that are going to be making a difference in the next couple of years.
Right.
We're the ones that are not voting. We're the ones that, thinking that nobody's really listening to us because, I mean, nobody listens to me. But really going out and talking to the younger generation because we want to have a voice as well.
Well, I'll tell you that is true, and again, that is why I'm trying to get people that are running for office to understand when there's an event, get out there, even if you can't stay no more than 5 minutes, because what happens is, and again, every Saturday and Sunday, Brenda, you know, from the area in which we come from, people gather together, they sit down and they talk, and they have their own individual private conversation. And most of the time it ends up being, well, who's going to be the next sheriff? Who's going to be the next this or next that? And it's that opportunity, it's that time you have the opportunity to actually sit down and talk to a person one-on-one, because rest assured, when you talk to a person one-on-one, you have the ability to change that person's mind and or give them another perception of who you might be versus on who they might have heard you to be. So when we look at all of this stuff, we know that you're going to be doing things from abroad. I understand that you're out there recruiting. I know that you're on Atlanta, Georgia time, and I want to thank you for calling in and engaging in this conversation, talking about local and state politics, why it's important for voters to get involved. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before I allow you to discharge your duty?
Not really. Just continue doing what you're doing and knowing that you have young people as myself that really pay attention and look up to you and keep being involved in the community. And also continue listening to us. Mm-hmm. I know you have younger daughters that we might say crazy things sometimes. They really pay attention to what we're saying because, I mean, there's a reason why we say and do things, and it will affect our communities in the future. But, just continue being involved in the community and keep this going because this is the most politics I've ever paid attention to the last couple of weeks with your show. Mm-hmm. Because I'm telling you, I don't.
Well, and Brandon, I'm glad that you said that because see, I've tried to get people to understand that internet streaming is going to supersede traditional radio within the next 5 to 10 years. Now, when you look at starting out with no listeners and going up to 15 and 20,000 listeners, that is a great impact. So when we look at this, what I'm doing. Okay, which is basically volunteering time. You have people that look like you, that don't understand, who hate, jealous, or whatever. And then you have people that look like you that, so it's a combination. So what I like to do, what I want to do, I want to welcome you and anybody else from your organization to play a major role in making a difference. Our message is clear. The number one goal is to just simply make a difference. I'm not trying to be Tom Joyner. I'm not trying to be Tavis Smiley. I'm my own individual person who is a person that want to engage other people in the process. Now, I know that your mother is out there listening, or she was. I'm not real sure if she's still on the board or not. But once again, please stay tuned. Please invite any other individual, any other professional that's out there that's got a message or that's doing something in their respective community, because our goal, once again, is to make sure that we make a difference each and every day when we go to bed. So, Brandon, thanks for calling in, and I'll let you go at this point. You can continue to listen in either live in the host queue, or you can log on live right from the website. So once again, I am glad that you called in. I'm so proud of you. Thanks for reaching out yesterday when we talked about some of those other issues, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to help the other individual out, because I can guarantee you this, they will be an asset to wherever you can find. So thanks, Brandon, for calling in.
Thank you.
Okay. We've been talking about local and state politics, why it's important for voters to get involved. Now, we know that voters, they often rely on politicians to provide them information and to carry that information to other potential voters. If the politician running fails to communicate well with the voter, it may not be clear what roles and responsibilities each one must assume. Some tasks might overlap, while others might be overlooked completely. some task, we know, leading to confusion and conflict between the voter and the politician, and the ultimate failure to achieve the objective, and that is to win the election. When we look at poor communication, we know that poor communication can lead to the spread of rumors and gossip, which can create tension among the candidate and the voter. If candidates fail to address negative speculation, then it can lead to self-destruction of a candidacy. Moral things. When we look at the morale of the candidacy, it may deteriorate as the speculation continues, and voters may fear the usual action of not willing to vote and cost a candidate his or her election. Now, when we look back years ago, we know that the Pew Research Center for the People and the Press, they predicted that 6 in 10 voting age adults would not show up at the polls on election day. Now, what's more important, the study found that those who were most unlikely to vote are demographically distinct from likely voters. And here we are. They are young. 34% of non-voters are younger than 30 years of age, and the vast majority, 7%, are younger than 50 years old. They are racially and ethnically diverse. A full 43% of non-voters are Hispanic, African American, or other racial and ethnic minorities. That is roughly double the 22% of likely voters comprised by minorities. They are less affluent than likely voters. Almost half, 46%, of non-voters have family incomes less than $30,000 per year, while only 19% of likely voters are from low-income families. They are less educated than likely voters. While 72% of likely voters have completed at least some college, most non-voters, 54%, did not attend college at all. You can call in now at 773-897-6398. Miss Dina Domain, are you out there?
Yes, sir. I'm here on the line.
I know, Dina, that you've been with your flag latest, and I know that you're probably stressed for time. I know you probably had court and all this, but I'm not sure if you were on when we had the other caller in from originally from Caldwell Parish, but now resides in Atlanta, Georgia. We talked about what do you think is the most important political issue at the moment. We also talked about why do you think people don't get involved in politics, specifically in Caldwell Parish and abroad. We also talked about what are general attributes or qualities a good political leader would have. Let me ask you this, Dina. What do you think, as an individual running for office, is the most important political issue at the moment?
Right now, we really need to address the fact that most of Caldwell Parish in my community, in our community, consists of voters that are below the poverty level, and they don't understand how much local politics, how much local politicians can influence their daily lives. The fact that a lot of our local politicians and people who get into office are elected by such a small percentage of our actual voting population makes a huge impact. They don't understand. It impacts what businesses come to our communities, what jobs become available, how much our taxes on sales, on products, on the production of items, it impacts us locally. And one of the comments I was reading on your
the live chat
line, they were saying people only get out and vote for the big major elections like the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very unfortunate because how big of an impact your local politicians can have on your individual communities. And I don't think that people truly understand it, which is why shows like this, like what you're doing, are so important to educate our voters. The community being educated and understanding what an impact local office can have on the community at large is what I think is one of the biggest issues that need to be addressed. And I agree with the young lady that was on earlier that reaching out to our younger voting population, even in high school, to where once you turn 18, voting impacts your future. It impacts colleges. It impacts what your student loan interest rate is. Can you get a grant? Can you get a Pell Grant? Can you get scholarships? Local politics and voting, getting out there and having your opinion can affect all sorts of things that you never would have imagined would be impacted. So being educated as to the events and what the issues are is essential in order to make our community work.
Right, and Dina,
shows like this.
Yeah, and sorry for cutting you off. And what one of the things, one of the goals is trying to connect the voter with the candidate. Okay, because oftentimes most people have zero knowledge of a candidate, especially on the national and the state level. And when you go in a grocery store, you can put your hands on a Dina Domain. You can put your hands on a Clay Bennett, Mitch Bratton, whatever other candidate that's running locally. So when we look at local, we're not going to talk about the specifics because we're going to bring you on at some point to talk specifically about your campaign. But when we look at the goal that we're trying to connect, number one and number two, the candidate to the voter, what is it specifically that you and your candidacy are doing to, in fact, engage as many people with your campaign as possible?
Well, the first step that I took was to reach out to individuals that ordinarily my world revolves around my family and my children and my church. So you have to get out of your routine and reach out to individuals that don't know you. They don't know. They don't have reason to come into contact with you. So we have to go out to them. We have to go to those churches. We have to go to those events. To each every opportunity that you have to mingle with individuals that are outside of your circle of what you do on a daily basis. Most of us have our routines and the individuals that are associated with those routines. We go to work, we go to school, we go to church, we go home, we deal with our children's activities, and if those things in our routine don't bring us into a culturally diverse atmosphere, then we actually, as a politician, need to make that connection. You can't expect the voters to come seek you out because a lot of them don't understand the impact that your office has on the community. So it's up to you as a candidate to reach out to those people and get them to understand how your office, like in my case, I'm running for clerk of court, how does a clerk of court's office affect Joe Blow, the voter, who doesn't understand? Many people have no reason to come in contact with the clerk's office, and they say, well, what can the clerk of court do for me? Well, in my instance, what I'm trying to do is make sure that the clerk's office becomes accessible to everyone by getting an integrated website, and that would allow many people to have access to records that they ordinarily wouldn't have. And you say, well, how does that help me? How does that help the average individual? Okay, well, for instance, if you have an elderly mother and you want to hire a sitter to take care of your mom while you're at work during the day, wouldn't it be nice to be able to get on your computer and look up the criminal history of the person you're hiring to sit with your mother and see if they have a history of drug abuse or a history of convictions for theft before you put them in a home with your elderly parent. That kind of thing, those are public records. Your clerk of court has those public records, and they belong to you as the public. They're your records. You should be able to have access to them. And most individuals don't understand that, yes, I can go look that up. I can go look and see that. And
right.
It's not accessible right now the way things are to the general public. You have to drive to the courthouse and take the initiative of going pull these great big dusty books out of storage and trying to pull individual files. And it shouldn't be that difficult. It should be in our day and age of modern technology and internet, like you were saying, to where internet radio that can reach millions of people through the internet. We should be able to have that here, even in our small community of Caldwell Parish. We should be able to have that. And as clerk of court, one of the things I intend to do, if elected, is get a grant, not try to get money out of our taxpayers, but a grant from the state, because it's essential to have that information. And that's just one instance. Many of the local offices, but going to the voter and explaining to them the importance of the office that you are running for and how it can affect their daily lives is going to be unbelievably important in the deciding of the election. Because once they understand what your office does and what that office can do for them, then they can understand your platform and what you can bring as a politician to that office. And it makes a difference.
Right.
It can make a difference in their lives. It can make a difference in their community. So the more education about the offices that's out there, the better our community is. So I think the number one thing that needs to happen is a candidate should make sure that the voting public understands what the office is and what it can do for them personally, how it impacts their lives.
Okay, Dina. If
it becomes important.
Yeah, if you hold that thought right there, if you got anything to do, just mute your line. We're going to pause right quick and run a commercial or two, and we'll be right back. We're going to pick up specifically with what you just said and how we can incorporate the community now to get involved, because the community is only as good as the people that's leading the community. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back on the backside of the break. Just stay tuned.
Yes, sir.
Looking for a personal injury attorney? Look no further than Columbia, Louisiana. W. Mark McKee specializes in personal injury cases. He is located at 7134 Highway 1 here on the Smoking Glass Hour with Beer and Glass. You may also contact Mark at 318-649-2622. That number again, 318-649-2622. Contact him today.
Hello, my name is David May, candidate for clerk of court in Caldwell Parish. There would be debate about who can best lead us into the future. But if I could sit down with each one of you, as I have so desperately tried, I would look into your eyes and tell you, my office and my staff will work hard for you, be honest with you, and always put you, the voter, first. I have enjoyed visiting with each one of you to tell you as much about me as I possibly could. Now, time is running out. I need you to please consider me as your next clerk of court for Caldwell Parish. I promise you one thing. I will do this job with the best of my ability. I have served my country in the Marines. Now I am asking to serve the parish for you. Vote David May, clerk of court, Caldwell Parish on October 24th, 2015. Paid for by David May for Clerk of Court.
On October 24th, 2015, elect Clay Bennett for experienced leadership. In 1996, I began my law enforcement career at the age of 29. Over the past 18 years, I have been to many schools in an effort to better serve our parish. I would never claim to know everything because law enforcement is a continuous process that takes years to learn, receiving legal updates and attending training classes from year to year. Just like any job, you get better at it over time by constant training, learning from mistakes made, and years spent doing your job. Equally important is the ability with the public and our youth is essential in building positive relationships with law enforcement. I have always been a true Spartan fan and eager to support our schools by sponsoring our sports teams through the years. By coaching Dixie Youth for many years, then being an assistant coach for our high school Spartan baseball team has given me the opportunity to make memories never forgotten and to build relationships with our young people. I have been a Christian for nearly 20 years. Currently, I serve as a RA leader for the kids in my church. I am also a member of the Gideons, serving as the treasurer for Caldwell Parish for many years. If our youth can see your next sheriff and law enforcement as a positive role model working with our community, then we will see positive change in our parish. This is paid political advertisement by Clay Bennett for sheriff. Please vote on October 24th, 2015.
We are back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass tonight, local and state politics, why it's important for voters to get involved. We're talking currently right now to Miss Dina Domain, candidate for Clerk of Court in Caldwell Parish. Dina, we know that voter turnout is generally low, especially in the African American community. How could more people be persuaded in that community to vote? And how are you able, or what are you able to do with that specific community to try and get them to understand that their vote does count? Voting in the 60s means the same as it does in 2015. So how are you able to intertwine that with your particular community and your candidates at this particular time?
Well, diversity is essential as far as making a cohesive community. And even though you may be of a minority in the community, your voice still needs to be heard. Mm-hmm. So the African American voice is one that needs to be heard. Their needs are one of the reasons I'm seeking the office I'm seeking, is because right now in Caldwell Parish, there is no free civil legal advice available. We have a free criminal advice if you get charged with a crime, but for people who have civil problems, divorces or tort claims, which is, negligence claims against somebody, there's no one to provide civil legal advice for free. There's very few attorneys that can take small claims in a small community like this. It's just simply cost prohibitive. It's difficult for attorneys to absorb costs and work for free on small claims. So the way the Clerk of Court's office can assist that, and it would definitely help our African American minority community, because most of those live below the poverty level in Caldwell Parish, which is sad, but that's the job community in our parish. Unfortunately, we simply don't have the jobs that the larger parishes have. But that doesn't mean that we don't have claims and problems that can be helped. as the clerk of court, what I'm trying to get across to our African American communities, and I'm trying to reach them door to door through individuals that have large families, and speak to them one-on-one and let them know that one of the things I intend to offer through the clerk of court, and as the only attorney running, is civil advice, to where when they come in with a question or they get served with paperwork that they don't understand before something terrible happens, something like a tax sale, it sells their house out from under them, or a deed where they had an interest in property and it all of a sudden got sold and they didn't understand what they got in the mail, or they got a letter in the mail that they didn't understand, they can bring that to their clerk of court and say, Dina, would you explain this to me and let me know what's going on? And that would be a service available to them. And it's very important that they understand that legal advice is something that should be available to everyone, and it should not be available only to the people who have thousands of dollars and can drop a few $100s on a consultation fee on a civil case. So unfortunately, because our parish is a very small parish, and unfortunately it's a very low-income parish, we don't have the resources to offer free civil advice for lawsuits.
So Dina.
And I would love to have that as a service the clerk of court offers.
Go ahead. If you finish, go ahead. Otherwise, what I want to do is ask you this question. But I know, but we know that there is a level of ignorance that exists in, and we're not going to just say the African American community. We're going to say those who may be undereducated or have little or no education. When we look at the clerk of court office, when we look at sheriff's sale, when we look at all of those transactions that takes place, for those who are out there listening now, and there are, explain to them as generic as you can, because like I said, your candidacy is coming up with regards to your full hour or two, and I don't want to take steal all of that away from that from you guys. But when we look at a sheriff's sale, explain to a person specifically how that works, and if there's anything that they can do to circumvent that. And you're not giving out legal advice. We're just talking from a candid conversation. In other words, the voter has an opportunity to get some sense of who Dina Domain is or may be.
Right. And, of course, you can always research these issues for yourself. And like you said, this isn't legal advice. But generally, when talking to sheriff's sale, what happens with that is you'll get a notice in the mail saying that a particular piece of property that you may own an interest in, or you may have some sort of a claim to. I hear the term heir property used a lot in Caldwell Parish, where, it's somebody in your family owned property. Well, you get a notice in the mail that there's taxes due on it. You don't understand what that means. Is that something I'm supposed to pay, or is that something that was paid, or what does that mean? Then the next thing you know, you got this great big bundle of paper that shows up at your house, and your name's somewhere in it, but you don't understand it. A month from now, somebody else went to the sheriff's sale and bid, and they can bid on the amount of taxes that were owed. It may only be a couple of $100. It could be up to $10,000. I mean, it could be thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars. But if the taxes on property aren't paid by a certain time, then it's foreclosed upon and it's sold for the amount of the taxes owed. So people can acquire large parcels of property through these sales for not that very much money. And it's sad, because a lot of times individuals lose their property because they didn't know, they didn't understand. And that's something that they should be able to walk to their clerk of court office and get an explanation on. Mm-hmm. And should I get elected to the clerk of court's office, that's what I intend. Some of the things that I intend to offer is when they get that big bundle of papers in the mail, what is it they can do in order to stop a sale? You can go to the sheriff's office, pay the taxes on it. Does it mean you own the property? Maybe not. There's lots of things that can happen between point A and point B, but there are options out there. There are things that people can do, and families can come together to keep property in the family. So it's a lot of information that's difficult for, especially people who, like you said, are undereducated, that didn't complete school, and they don't understand all this legal jargon and terminology. And truthfully, most people don't. If you're not a lawyer, you don't understand it. Just like if you were not a doctor and you tried to read the doctor's notes about a surgery, and he talks about all the different body parts and the veins and things that he did, and you don't know what that means. You don't know that lifting this meant you got to this organ or that organ. So without being a surgeon, you don't understand what those notes are. So it's not insulting or degrading or telling anyone that you're not smart enough to comprehend what's going on.
Right.
It's just that it's designed and it's formulated by lawyers. So, of course, a lawyer would have a better understanding of it than someone who's not familiar with the legal process.
Right. Hey, Dana, I see. I believe it's Apocalypse said that earlier that I don't know. He says he or she says that I see a lot of kids of both races just don't care. Do you find that in not just your law practice, but from a civic minded standpoint, and if that be the case, and I'm glad because we're talking about all races, but every now and then I specifically hone in on certain problems of certain communities. So when we look at the both races and all races that just don't care, do you see that? And if so, how can we develop some type of a synopsis that will include these people that don't care to in fact start to care? Because if you got a pothole, your local police juror is the person that should be able to get this fixed. If there is crime or drugs going on in your area, the sheriff department are the ones that should deal with this. So how do we get them to understand that your vote does count?
Well, it has to start at a very young age. And what you had mentioned earlier is that our youth seem just not to care. Well, we need to start that education process starting in the schools. And I've asked to be able to speak starting in our high school or even in our junior high to understand how our process works, our legal process works, and how the court can assist people. As you know, I've been the juvenile attorney in Caldwell Parish for many, many years now, and I've seen so many kids come through the court system, and that was the attitude. They just don't care. They don't understand how any of this affects them. How does it affect their world? As a growing young person, how does it impact their world? And until you can demonstrate through education and through real life examples to our youth how the political community can impact them and their lives, they're not going to take an interest.
Right.
It's simply not something that they're going to concern themselves with, because until you show them how it impacts them and has an effect on their daily lives, they're not going to care.
Right, right.
So we have to reach, and it's really important. I can't stress it enough that we have got to reach out to our youth. And the younger the better.
Right.
Starting them in junior high, 6th, 7th grade civics levels, to where we can make it more of an interactive type learning environment, bringing in real world examples rather than simply teaching them who our presidents were and the names of our presidents and our vice presidents. And while that history is important, we need some type of an interactive system to be able to reach out to children and involve them in our community and show them how the leadership of our community affects their daily lives.
Very, very well said, Dana. We're joined now by a caller who has come up in the host queue that wants to come in from, I believe, Hollywood, California. Caller number, last 4 digits, 2345. How are you doing tonight? We're talking right now to Dina Domain, who is a candidate for clerk of court in Caldwell Parish. We're talking tonight about local and state politics, why it's important for voters to get involved. How are you doing tonight?
Doing very good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. I don't know if you heard Ms. Domain. We were talking specifically about how we can engage the younger generation to get actively involved in the voting process, be that on the local level, the state level, or the national level. In your opinion, and based on what you do in your profession, having grown up, graduated from college, I believe as valedictorian, if I'm not mistaken, what is it that you see the adults, the leaders, the clergymen, and all of those who are above and beyond the age of 18, what can we do now to include these younger kids in the voting process and let them know that their voice does count?
Well, see, the problem, and it's just not a problem that's only in Caldwell Parish or the state of Louisiana. It's a problem nationwide that it's a lot of apathy amongst the younger voters, and that's why it's low voter turnout. And we can have as many voter registration drives in order to try to get people registered and where they'll be able to vote, but getting them actually involved, the problem is the politicians don't meet the younger generation at the crossroads of what allows them to remain active and what they are engaged in. And what I mean is social media. Social media has a huge influence in the lives of, even the age of kids that nowadays that are unable to vote. I mean, you have kids that are 2 and 3 years old that are able to work an iPad or iPhone and, go on Facebook or Twitter and, some of those sites. So if you had a candidate who is able to say, hey, if you want to know a little bit more about me, because kids are not, taking the time to go and listen to candidates do speeches on the stump, and nor are they reading their, list of things that they will do once they get in office. They're not reading those in the paper. But what they will do if it's something on YouTube, or you see that this person has said this in verse in Twitter, or a person or a younger voter can say, hey, we're supporting candidate X, and they post their picture on Instagram. Those are, elements that will allow the younger contingency to feel like they're involved. And once you meet them at that crossroad, then you can start hammering the issues about what separates you from any other candidate. But until you meet them on their playground, then they're not going to be interested in, the whole process. Okay,
I noticed you said voter registration drive. And let me give you this specific fact. 2 weeks ago, an organization right here in Caldwell Parish had a voter registration drive at one of the busiest places here in Caldwell Parish. Can you, or are you willing to guess how many people they registered to vote in a 4-hour time span? They were only able to register one voter. And they had to coerce, literally, this person to go out and register to vote. And I found that very disheartening, but I understand there is a lot of voter apathy. There is a lot of community apathy. There is a lot of diversity missing within certain geographical areas of the country as a whole. So when we look at trying to incorporate these communities together, because I believe, just like we learned in civics and all this other stuff, e pluribus unum, out of many comes one. We should be that one community. Now, when we look at the situation as a whole, people say sometimes if you don't vote, you have no right to complain about government. What do you think about that?
Well, it's like, I've said that sometimes. You know, if you didn't take the time out and choose one candidate over the other, then you can't complain on either. And a lot of times, it's, you know, from the person who's sitting at home and said, well, there's no need for me to go out to the polls because my one vote doesn't matter. You know, elections do come down to, you know, where it can be close votes. And, you know, the thing that we looked at in this country is with respect to the national election, because you have, you know, it doesn't necessarily go by the popular vote, mm-hmm. the office of the presidency. Well, people will look at something like that and say, well, my vote, if it, you know, may not count on a national level, then it probably won't count on a local or
excellent
level
point.
Either. And that's just the wrong feeling to have.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that you know that can be changed is by community leaders, you know, before they even say what their platform is. They need to say, look, no matter if you vote for me or vote for my opponent, at least go out and vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you made a very good, a valid point, and it actually validates why I believe it was Speaker of the House Tom Foley, one of them, that basically said that you know, all politics is local, and that's true. And I was just telling Miss Domain what she understands and knows, and I'm assuming that the other candidates that's running they understand, because see, here locally, you can actually physically touch the individual that leads your particular district. You can actually go in and have a specific conversation with that person. You can actually go to their house and actually talk to them, whereas on the state level, you might see your state representative or your state senator, and you definitely may not see on the national level. You're definitely not going to see the president. You're definitely not going to see the vice president. You might get lucky and see the United States senator and the United States congressman. So when you said what you just mentioned, when we look at trying to our best to make a difference locally, and I believe once it starts locally, it moves on up to the state and the national, because you have to understand what it is that you're dealing with. And like you said, most people just don't understand the political process. However, let me flip back to the 60s era. I believe that during that era, and I just got warned that we got about 4 minutes. Miss Domain, Mr. Rob, I'm going to let each one of you guys give a closing statement, because I've just been alerted we got 4 minutes left. Any closing statement?
Well,
go ahead, Ms. Domain.
I apologize, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off. I agree with statement of apathy, and I want to just stress how we as politicians truly need to tailor our messages and make sure that we show and demonstrate how we will be able to reach out and affect the youth and affect the different communities. We have to show how it will play a role in their daily lives. If we are unable to communicate that to them, then we will never get a response back from them. They have to understand on a daily basis how our role and our office will impact their daily lives. Once they comprehend that, then maybe that apathy will start going away, and they'll realize that, yes, each vote does matter.
Right.
And I'm going to go out and vote, and because I want to make sure that when this event happens, I'm a part of it.
Right. I'm sorry, we got about a minute and a half. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, I would say that the apathy part is something that can really be eradicated if the divisiveness between the candidates, and we see it at a national level with the really the two parties, and it works its way down to the state and local level. And the one thing that candidates should be able to say, hey, look, this is where we are alike, but this is where we are different, instead of saying we're just two totally different people. Because a lot of times if you're at home with a voter and you just see constant, dirt and mud being thrown between candidates on whatever level, you will just sit there and say, you know what, I'm not going to get involved in any of that mess. And that's part of the problem. And the only way that we get a solution to that is, we say, hey, that person has their ideas of how they want to fix things. Here are my ideas of how I want to fix things. But the bottom line is we both want to fix things. And I think if a person at home, feels like that the onus on them to make that decision, then that'll, bring
Right. I'll tell you, I should have extended this for 2 hours. What we did, we set it up for an hour and a half. We got some very interesting information that's being provided. There are individuals that are out there on all three sites, whether it's Spreaker.com, the Smoking Glass Hour, or the live chat line. Dina, that's okay. I know that Dina's son is out there listening. So we are reaching at least 2 children, and that is very good. Dina, I appreciate you taking out the time. This was extended to the other candidates. We got about 30 seconds. Hopefully, just hopefully, the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass can provide another way to connect the voter to the public servant, and together to create a better climate in the political process. You've been listening to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on tonight, local and state politics, why it's important for a voter to get involved. And we may end up doing another show Saturday, and we will have plenty of time because I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to play a role. Doug, thanks for calling in. Dina, thanks for calling in. Brandon, thanks for calling in. And all of those who are out there listening, thanks for calling in, and may the good Lord continue to bless you each and every day. Good night.